I used to think wealthy people were just lucky. Then I spent one afternoon with a woman who had started with less than I had and built something that paid her while she slept. My name is Dana, and this is the story of the afternoon that changed how I think about money, work, and what it means to actually live. Before I get into that, I want to ask you something. Where are you listening from right now? Drop your city in the comments below. And if you are someone who has ever felt like your paycheck disappears before you even have a chance to breathe, this story is for you. I was 26 years old, living in a one-bedroom apartment in Dayton, Ohio. I worked the front desk at a physical therapy clinic on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I picked up shifts at a coffee shop 2 blocks from my apartment called Perch. I was not lazy.
I want to be clear about that.
I worked 43 hours most weeks. I kept a budget in a spiral notebook with a green cover. I did not eat out more than twice a month. I clipped coupons from the Sunday paper, even though I was 26 years old, and my coworkers thought that was hilarious. And every single month, my savings account sat at somewhere between $800 and $900. It never crossed $1,000. Something always came up. A car repair, a copay, a utility bill that ran higher than I expected. I had been living like this for 3 years. You know that feeling when you have been patient so long that patience itself starts to feel like a mistake? That was me every time I opened my banking app on a Sunday night. The woman I am going to tell you about was named Constance Webb. She was 61 years old, and she lived about 40 minutes outside of Dayton in a town called Tip City. She was my mother's college roommate. They had stayed close for decades, the kind of friendship that survives distance and time and life getting in the way. I had met Constance maybe 4 or 5 times over the years at family gatherings. She was quiet. She did not talk about herself much. She drove a sensible gray sedan, and she always brought something homemade when she came to visit, usually a pound cake in a glass dish with a blue lid. What I did not know about Constance, until my mother mentioned it one Thursday evening on the phone, was that Constance had not held a traditional job in 11 years. She was not retired in the way I understood retirement. She was not living off a pension. She was 61 years old, and she was living off income that came in whether she worked that day or not. My mother said it almost as an aside, the way you mention something you assume everyone already knows. Constance has done very well for herself. She figured out a long time ago how to make her money move. I sat with that phrase for 3 days. How to make her money move. I called my mother back on Sunday morning and asked for Constance's number. Constance picked up on the second ring. I introduced myself, reminded her who I was, and apologized for calling out of nowhere. She stopped me before I could finish the apology.
Dana, she said.
Your mother told me you might call.
Come on Saturday.
I'll have coffee ready. That was it. No interrogation. No lengthy explanation required. Just come on Saturday. I wrote it down in my green spiral notebook. Saturday.
Tip City.
Constance Webb. I circled it twice. The drive out took 40 minutes on Route 40. It was a clear October morning, the kind where the sky is so blue it looks artificial, and the leaves on the trees along the highway are just starting to go orange at the edges. I had my notepad on the passenger seat and a pen clipped to the cover. I was nervous in a way I could not fully explain. I was not going to a job interview. I was not asking for money. I was just going to talk to a woman I barely knew about something I did not understand. But my hands were slightly damp on the steering wheel the whole way there. Constance's house was a white 2-story on a corner lot with a wide front porch and a garden along the left side that still had late-season marigolds in it, orange and yellow, running all the way to the fence. A wind chime made of copper pipes hung near the front door. It moved a little in the October breeze. She met me at the door before I knocked. I heard the car, she said, smiling. Come in. Her kitchen was warm. There was a pot of coffee already made, and she poured 2 mugs without asking how I took mine. She set a small pitcher of cream on the table beside a ceramic sugar bowl with a chip in the lid that had been carefully glued back together. I noticed that. The chip glued back. Someone who fixes things instead of replacing them. We sat across from each other at a round oak table near the window. Outside, the marigolds shifted a little in the wind. Tell me where you are, Constance said. Not tell me about yourself. Not what do you do.
Tell me where you are.
I told her everything. The clinic, the coffee shop, the 43 hours a week, the green notebook, the $890 that never seemed to become $900. I told her I was not careless with money. I told her I was tired of working hard and staying exactly in place. She listened without interrupting. She held her mug in both hands, and she looked at me steadily the entire time. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You're doing everything right. That is actually the problem." I looked at her. "You have been taught to trade time for money," she said, "and you're very good at it.
But there is a ceiling on that.
There are only so many hours. What nobody taught you is how to build something that earns while you are not there." She set her mug down on the oak table. "I am going to show you how I think about this. And then you are going to go home and decide what to do with it." I opened my notebook to the first blank page. You know that moment when you realize you have been working hard in exactly the wrong direction? Not the wrong job, not the wrong city, just the wrong direction entirely. Like you have been rowing a boat with everything you have and you did not know until right now that the oars were backwards. That is what sitting across from Constance felt like. I was raised to believe that working hard was the answer. Work hard, save carefully, wait patiently. Nobody told me that waiting without a strategy is just hoping with a nicer name. Constance stood up and carried her mug to the counter. She refilled it and stayed standing, leaning lightly against the kitchen counter, looking at the marigolds through the window. "The first thing I want you to understand," she said, "is that passive income is not a shortcut. People hear that word, and they think easy. It is not easy. It is a different kind of hard. Instead of trading hours for dollars, you are trading patience and learning, and a little money up front for income that keeps coming after the work is done." She turned to look at me. "The second thing I want you to understand is that you do not need a lot of money to start. I started with $400 and a library card." $400 and a library card. I wrote that down exactly. Constance came back to the table and sat down. She folded her hands around her mug and looked at me the way a person looks at someone they are genuinely rooting for. "I am going to give you 7 principles," she said. "Not rules. Principles. Rules can be broken. Principles, when you really understand them, you would not want to break." I had my pen ready. "First principle," she said. "Save before you plan, not after." She let that sit for a second. Most people save what is left over after they spend. That means saving is always last. It always loses. What you do instead is decide on a number, even if it is $20 a week, and you move it out of your checking account the same day your paycheck arrives. Before you pay anything else. Before you buy groceries. Before you do anything. That money is not yours to spend. It is yours to deploy.
Deploy.
I had never heard anyone use that word about $20 before. "How much did you save last month?" she asked. "About $60, I said. She nodded slowly. "And how much did you spend on things you did not plan to spend on?" I thought about it. The parking ticket. The sweater I bought because it was on sale. The dinner out with a coworker that turned into 2 dinners.
More than 60, I admitted.
"That is where we start," she said. "Second principle. Understand the difference between an asset and an expense wearing a costume." She picked up a pen from the counter behind her and drew a quick line down the center of a paper napkin. "An asset puts money in your pocket over time," she said, writing the word on the left side. "An expense takes it out." She wrote that on the right. Most of what we are told to want, the new car, the upgraded phone, the bigger apartment, those are expenses wearing the costume of success. They feel like rewards. They are actually anchors. She slid the napkin across the table toward me. I looked at it. 2 words. A line between them. I thought about the phone I had been saving up to replace. My current one worked fine. The screen had a small crack in the lower right corner that did not affect anything. I had been telling myself I deserved an upgrade. I picked up the napkin and folded it into my notebook. "Third principle," Constance said, settling back in her chair. "Find the opportunity that fits your life as it actually is, not as you wish it were." She looked at me directly. "What do you have access to right now? Not what do you wish you had. What do you actually have?" I thought about it out loud. A car. A 1-bedroom apartment with a second parking space I never used. A decent camera I had bought 2 years ago for a photography class I took one semester and never finished. Basic accounting skills from my time at the clinic where I helped manage patient billing twice a week. Constance listened with her head slightly tilted. That parking space, she said. Do you rent it out? No, I said. How much do parking spaces rent for near your building? I had genuinely never thought about it. I don't know. Maybe $70-$80 a month. Find out, she said simply. That is $70 or $80 that could come in every month without you lifting a finger after the first conversation with a tenant. I wrote it down. Parking space. It felt almost embarrassingly small. But Constance must have seen that on my face because she said something I have thought about many times since. Small and consistent beats large and occasional every single time. A river does not move mountains by being dramatic. It moves them by never stopping. I need to stop here for a second because I want you to understand something about that kitchen. It was not a grand setting. There was no whiteboard, no presentation, no laptop open to a chart. It was just a woman with a chipped sugar bowl and a pot of coffee and 40 minutes of her Saturday morning. And I was sitting there realizing that I had been walking past opportunities my entire adult life without recognizing them. The parking space I had never rented, the camera sitting in my closet, the billing skills I used at work but had never thought to offer anywhere else. Have you ever looked at your own life and realized the thing you needed was already there and you just had not looked at it the right way? Drop a comment if you know exactly what I mean. I would love to hear it. Fourth principle, Constance continued. Start before you are ready, because ready is a feeling, not a condition. She picked up her mug again. I waited 2 years before I started my first passive income stream because I kept thinking I needed to know more, study more, save more,
Be more prepared.
You know what happened in those 2 years? Nothing, I guessed. Exactly nothing, she said. The woman who lived down the street from me started the same week. I was still planning. By the time I finally started, she had already made back her initial investment and then some. Starting small and imperfect beats, waiting for perfect every single time. She pointed at my notebook. Write this down exactly. Done imperfectly is worth more than perfect unstarted. I wrote it down exactly. Fifth principle. Reinvest before you reward yourself. Constance stood up again and moved to the window. The marigolds were catching the mid-morning light now, bright orange against the dark soil. When your first passive income stream starts producing, and it will, your instinct will be to spend some of it. That is human. That is fine. But in the beginning, the first several months at minimum, put the profits back in. Grow the thing before you harvest it. A farmer does not eat the seeds. She turned back toward me. Rudy, my neighbor 3 houses down, started renting out his basement storage space 4 years ago for $60 a month. He reinvested those $60 into a second storage unit he rented at a facility and sublet for $90. Now he has 4 units and brings in over $400 a month without doing anything but collecting payments. $400 a month. From storage space. I thought about my parking spot again. $70 or $80. Reinvested.
Grown.
The numbers were small, but I could see the shape of the thing she was describing. Sixth principle, she said, sitting back down. Diversify once you are stable. Not before. She held up one finger. One stream first. Get it working. Get it consistent. Understand it. Then and only then do you add a second. People make the mistake of trying to build 5 things at once and doing all 5 poorly. Build one thing well, then build the next.
She paused.
And reward yourself. Not extravagantly. Not in a way that undermines what you are building. But do not live like a monk either. Use no more than 1/3 of your passive income profits on something that makes your actual life better. You are building this for a reason. Do not forget to live while you build. Seventh principle, Constance said. Her voice was quieter now, more deliberate. Patience is not passive. Patience is an active choice you make every single day when the results are not visible yet. She looked at me steadily. Most people quit in the first 90 days. Not because the strategy failed. Because they could not see the progress and they confused invisible with absent. The money is moving. The foundation is building. You just cannot see it yet. Stay consistent. Keep learning. Adapt when something is not working. But do not quit because it is slow. She folded her hands on the table. That is all 7. Write them somewhere you will see them. I looked down at my notebook. 3 pages, front and back, filled with her words. I looked back up at her. Why are you telling me all of this? I asked. You don't really know me. Constance smiled. It was the kind of smile that carries something behind it. Your mother told me you were the kind of person who would actually do something with it, she said. I have told these 7 things to 4 people in my life. 3 of them changed their situation entirely. I like those odds. I drove home on Route 40 with the windows down even though it was October and the air had gone sharp and cold. I did not turn the radio on. I just drove and let the wind come through and thought about everything Constance had said in that warm kitchen with the chipped sugar bowl and the copper wind chime moving in the breeze outside. By the time I crossed back into Dayton, I had made 3 decisions. Not 5. Not 10. 3. Because Constance had told me to start small, and I was going to take her at her word. Decision 1. The parking space. I got home, opened my laptop, and looked up what parking spaces near my building were renting for on 3 different apps. The range was $65 to $90 a month. My space was covered, which put it on the higher end. I typed up a simple listing. 4 sentences. 1 photo I took with my phone standing in the space with the afternoon light coming in at an angle. I posted it that same Sunday evening. By Tuesday morning, I had 2 inquiries. By Thursday, I had a signed agreement with a woman named Patricia who worked nights at the hospital 2 blocks over and needed a safe covered space for her car. $80 a month. First payment on the 1st. I sat at my kitchen table after I sent her the confirmation, and I looked at my phone for a long moment. $80 a month. For a space I had been leaving empty for 2 years. I did not cry, but it was close. Not because of the $80. Because of what the $80 meant. Something was working for me. Even just a little. Even just this much. Something was finally working for me. Decision 2. The camera. I had a decent DSLR camera sitting in my closet in a padded bag. I had used it for 1 semester of a photography class, and then life had gotten busy, and it had sat there collecting dust for nearly 2 years. I spent 3 evenings that week on YouTube learning about how people rented camera equipment to other photographers and videographers on peer-to-peer rental platforms. The learning curve was not steep. The setup took 1 afternoon. I listed the camera body and 2 lenses. The first rental came in 11 days later. A photography student at Wright State needed it for a weekend project. She paid $38 for the weekend. $38. For equipment that had been sitting in my closet doing nothing. I reinvested it immediately the way Constance had said. I used it to buy a protective lens filter I had been meaning to get anyway, which made the equipment more rentable. Decision 3 was slower. I had been doing patient billing at the clinic for 2 years. I knew medical billing software. I knew insurance codes. I knew how to catch errors that cost small practices money. It was not glamorous knowledge, but it was specific. And specific knowledge I was learning had value. I spent 4 weeks reading about how to offer freelance medical billing services to small independent practices, the kind that could not afford a full-time billing department. I found 2 local practices through a professional Facebook group for physical therapists that were looking for part-time billing help they could bring on remotely. I sent 2 emails. Short and specific. Here is what I know. Here is what I can do. Here is what it would cost. One of them wrote back within 48 hours. It was not fully passive income. Not yet. But it was flexible income that came from knowledge I already had on a schedule I controlled. Constance had told me the first stream does not have to be perfectly passive. It just has to break the pattern of trading all your hours for all your money. It broke the pattern. 3 months after I sat in Constance's kitchen, I called her on a Sunday morning. She picked up on the second ring, same as before. How is it going? She asked. Like she already knew something good had happened. I told her about Patricia and the parking space, about the camera rentals, which had now brought in $112 over 6 weeks, about the billing client who had signed a 3-month contract. There was a pause on the line. Dana, she said quietly, you did it. I just followed what you told me, I said. No, she said. Plenty of people get told things. You went home and did something with it. That is not the advice. That is you. I held the phone and looked out my apartment window at the parking lot below, where Patricia's car sat in my old empty space. There is a difference between being told the right thing and being ready to hear it. I do not know exactly what made that October Saturday the day I was ready. Maybe I was just tired enough. Maybe the timing was right. Maybe it was the marigolds, the chipped sugar bowl, the copper wind chime, a woman who did not have to give me her Saturday morning, but did anyway. Whatever it was, I am glad I made that phone call. 2 years after that Saturday in Tip City, my savings account crossed $10,000 for the first time in my life. I remember the exact moment I saw it. It was a Wednesday morning. I was standing in my kitchen in my scrubs before my shift at the clinic, waiting for my coffee to finish brewing. I opened my banking app the way I always did, and I stood there looking at the number for a long time. $10,214. I set my phone face down on the counter. I finished making my coffee. I sat down at my kitchen table, and I just breathed for a minute. It had not happened all at once. That is the thing nobody tells you about building something slow and steady. There is no single dramatic moment where everything changes. There is just one Tuesday where you notice it is a little better than last Tuesday. And then one month where you notice it is meaningfully better than last month. And then one Wednesday morning in your kitchen before work where you look at a number and realize that the person who opened a banking app on Sunday nights with a hollow feeling in her chest is not who you are anymore. The parking space was still rented. Patricia had renewed twice. She brought me a small poinsettia at Christmas the first year, left it outside my door with a note that said thank you for the safe spot. I kept the pot on my windowsill until March. The camera rentals had grown. I had added a second lens and a portable lighting kit, both purchased entirely from rental profits. The equipment now brought in between $90 and $140 most months, without me doing much beyond answering messages and arranging drop-offs. The billing work had expanded to 2 clients. One of them had referred me to a colleague. It was still flexible, still on my terms, still built around my existing schedule at the clinic and the coffee shop. But it was mine in a way that a shift at Perch never quite was. I had not quit either job. Constance had told me not to, not yet, not until the passive streams were truly stable and diversified. I was still following her principles in order. One thing solid before building the next. But for the first time in my adult life, my money was moving. Not sitting. Not shrinking. Moving. Working. Doing something while I slept. I went back to visit Constance on a Saturday in November, almost exactly 2 years after the first visit. I brought her a pound cake in a glass dish, the same way she always brought one to my mother. It felt right. We sat at the same round oak table. She had made coffee again. The sugar bowl with the glued chip was still there. I told her everything. The numbers. The clients. The camera. Patricia's poinsettia. The Wednesday morning with the banking app. Constance listened the same way she had listened the first time. Completely still. Both hands around her mug. Eyes steady. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What are you going to build next?" I laughed. I could not help it. "I knew you were going to ask that," I said. She smiled. The answer to that question never stops being important. I have thought a lot about what made that first Saturday work. Why that conversation landed when other advice had not. And I think it comes down to this. Constance did not tell me what I lacked. She helped me see what I already had. The parking space I had ignored. The camera collecting dust. The skills I used at work every day without ever thinking of them as valuable outside of work. She did not make me feel behind. She made me feel like I was standing at the beginning of something, which is a completely different feeling. There is a difference between someone telling you what to do and someone helping you see what is already possible. That took me a long time to understand, but I understand it now. I want to ask you something before I go. Is there something in your life right now, a skill, a space, a piece of equipment, a thing you know how to do, that is sitting unused? Something that could be working for you right now if you just looked at it a little differently? Comment below and tell me what it is. Even if you are not sure yet what to do with it. Just naming it is the first step. I read every comment, and I will reply.